Good morning, Facebook friends. Welcome to Why the Rich Stay Rich and the Poor Stay Poor. I'm super excited about today. We're going to be visiting with Todd Litman. He's an attorney, he's an estate planning specialist, and we're going to talk about trusts and how to protect your assets. So, Todd, I'm going to start with asking you to share with our viewers a little bit about how long you've been a trust attorney and kind of what your expertise covers, and that, and give a little background on yourself and what we're going to be doing.
Sounds great. I've been practicing for 30 years now. My office was in Costa Mesa. I'm now in Tustin. My specialty is primarily estate planning. That would be 70% of my practice. Another 30% is in business law, setting up corporations, LLCs. I also have a master's in taxation. I tell people if you go to an attorney, you should have somebody that has somewhat of a tax background. And I teach estate planning and probate at Coastline College.
Okay. Now, I know you said you lived here in Orange. Is your office in Orange? Where's your office?
My office is in Tustin, right off of Red Hill and Edinger, off the 55 and the 5 freeway.
Okay. All right. Terrific. All right. The first place we're going to start with is I want to talk a little bit about who should be looking at a trust. So, I guess what are the main points in their mind saying, okay, I need to really consider, talking to an estate attorney?
Usually I tell people, the first question I ask is, do you own real estate? If you own real estate, then a living trust is definitely the way to go. The reason being is that if you own real estate and the fair market value is $150,000 or more, then that ends up going through probate if you were to pass away. So I tell people what the main reason of a trust is. I would say the primary reason is avoiding probate. Second reason people get trust is to limit in the event of incapacity. Unfortunately, I'm having a lot more clients that are becoming incapacitated through Alzheimer's, dementia, things like that. And if they have a trust, then it's going to make things a lot easier. And the third thing that people get trust for is primarily for tax reasons, but that's not as much of an issue today with the new tax laws.
Well, when you say, okay, my mother is struggling with dementia and Alzheimer's and that, so we're dealing with some of those things, but when you say it's going to make things easier, what are some of the things it's going to make easier for them?
So with avoiding probate, the reason that you do a trust is, again, you own real estate, it's $150,000 or greater. You die whether you have a will or you don't have a will. Unfortunately, it still ends up going through the probate process. And the way that works is we're going to transfer your real estate, your bank accounts, everything out of your name as an individual and right back into your name as trustee of your trust. So that if you were to die or become incapacitated, your successor trustee can take control of those assets and distribute them how you've outlined in your trust document. So if you develop dementia and you have it in a trust and you need to sell a piece of real estate or gain access to a bank account, your successor trustee can get access to that bank account and be able to pay your bills, sell the real estate, and make sure things are taken care of.
All that's already been established within the trust, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's that's a huge point because once you're in the middle of all those challenges, in fact, I wonder if you can even get someone that is really struggling, let's say with Alzheimer's. I don't think you can even get a document notarized at that point any longer, right?
Correct. Once they become dementia sets in, if you don't have it in a trust or you don't have a durable power of attorney drafted, then you end up having to go through what's called a court conservatorship. That runs between $5,000 to $10,000 in fees, and it can take up to 6 months just to get somebody appointed. The probate process, if you don't have your property in trust, people say, what's so bad about probate? Number one, today it takes about 1.5 years to go through probate. So if somebody dies, that's how long it's going to take before your children end up getting paid the money they're entitled to receive. The other thing is the fees. Attorney's fees, and if you go through a probate process, are incredibly expensive. If you have a $200,000 home with a $180,000 mortgage, the fees involved in a probate process will be roughly $15,000.
Wow.
Where if you have a trust, it can immediately be distributed, not that 1.5 year long process, probably $1,000 in attorney's fees at the end instead of $15,000, and it's very limited as far as people being able to contest things. If it ends up going through probate, many people come through the woodworks and tend to contest things. Where if you have a trust, it can be distributed so quickly that people don't have a chance to come in and contest things.
In my conversation with Todd before we got started, one of the things that Todd brought up that I had never thought about is share with the groups about the like a single mother and either that doesn't own a home. Mm-hmm. What are some of the reasons that a trust could be beneficial?
So people very often will say, do I need a trust? And I usually say, if you own real estate, yes. If you don't own real estate, then the next question is, do your assets exceed $150,000 in fair market value? If they do, then we still need to do a trust, because that's the cutoff on whether you're going to end up going through probate or not. But when a person comes in and says, I don't have any of those, then we say, okay, should we just do a will? Well, I gave you the example of a mom, maybe a single mom, has a life insurance policy for $500,000 and has minor children. You never want to name minor children as a beneficiary of your life insurance policy, because if you do, then it ends up that we have to get a guardianship appointed through court, and your children will get all the money at the age of 18, which $500,000 as an 18-year-old may not be the best thing to get. Yeah. So instead, we can create a revocable living trust, have that money go into the trust when mom dies to be paid out to your children at the ages that we set up. So I have children, and my wife and I, our trust says, if we die, this money will stay in trust for our children's benefit. They will get health, education, support, and maintenance needs paid for. But when they get a 4-year college degree, they get a third, and at age 30, they get the remainder. Right. So you can dictate when the children will get that money at.
Yeah. I never really thought about this until as you're starting to explain these things. And now, those that know me, I'm all about love. And I never thought about trust, as far as being, a loving act, but it really is, because it's not about you, you're gone, right?
Correct, yeah.
It's all about really the love that you have for your kids, for your family. And I know there are all kinds of people today, that whether they're single dads, single moms, that don't own homes, that don't have high net worths, but their kids are young. And if you're in that place, I know your kids mean everything to you. Having an insurance policy, at least a term policy, so if something were to happen and you're no longer here for them, that there's a plan to help protect them and provide for them. So.
And one of the saddest things that I have is when children come in to see me after the parents have died, and if they don't have a trust, and I have to tell them, okay, we're going to sit down, this is going to be a 1.5-year process that we're going to go through, and at the end of the day, you're going to have to pay me $15,000 in attorney's fees, and they say, Mom and Dad could have avoided this to do a trust for $1,000 or $1,200, and I say yes. So it's definitely, the other thing is you can leave money in a trust, and unfortunately many of my clients have children with autism or grandchildren with autism, and what they don't understand is if you don't leave it into what's called a special needs trust, those grandchildren are going to lose their governmental benefits that they're otherwise entitled to. Yeah. So a lot of times when we're doing trusts and we're leaving it to certain beneficiaries, we always ask, do any of your children have these issues? Yeah. Sometimes, unfortunately, we have drug and alcohol issues that we can keep it in trust so until they're clean and sober, and then they get the money. So there's all sorts of things you can do with a trust when you're leaving it.
I've prior to this conversation, I always believed if you don't own property, it doesn't make sense to have a trust. But I'm changing that. I think what Todd has shared to me is just super important. If you have children, if you have anybody you care about, then this is something that you need to address as far as if these children are young and whether it be from birth to probably even through into college, you want to have a path for them where there's a plan of some sort that they can fall back on if you're gone. So having this trust and the insurance tied together, I think is critical strategy to have. Now, I know what people are thinking. First thing they're thinking is well, that sounds good, but is it affordable for me? Is there an entry level for a young single mom that's got a 3 or 4 year old?
I'm very busy because I do a trust package for people that's much more reasonable than the bigger firms. I got asked to be in a big firm, and my price of the trust was going to have to go 3 times as much as I am today. But for a single person, we charge $1,000 for not only the trust, but what are called wills. You still need a will even when you have a trust, but it's what's called a pour-over will. And it just says if I forgot to put something in my trust, please pour it into my trust when I die. But that package includes durable powers of attorney, which are super important dealing with assets that may not be inside the trust. If you lose capacity, it allows somebody to sign for you. Yeah. Advanced healthcare directives are included in our package. So for that $1,000 fee, a single person can have all of those documents, which are just as important, in my opinion, as a trust. Because if you're in a hospital and a medical decision has to be made, you need to have an advanced healthcare directive drafted to be able to allow somebody to make those decisions if you can't make those on your own.
Okay. All right, terrific. All right, so what are some of the most important components of a trust fund?
So with a trust document, you have the trustor, the person who creates the trust. That's you as the client. You also have a trustee, the person who's going to manage the assets, which is also you. And then you have a beneficiary, which is the person benefiting the trust, which is also you currently. But when you die, you have what's called a successor trustee. And that's probably the biggest component that we need to discuss when a client comes in is who's going to take care of my estate when I die and make sure that my assets go to the individuals that are entitled to receive the money. And also, who is that same person going to be if I become incapacitated and have to pay my day-to-day bills? Right. So the trustee is a very important component of the trust that we have to decide who will that be. And normally, if you have adult children, it would be your children that would step in. But I always tell people, don't have co-trustees. 30 years of doing this, I would say 90% of the time, if you have co-trustees, that means two people, two children acting together, we have problems. And the reason being is if you become incapacitated during lifetime, both those children now have to sign all the checks together. Both the children have to go to the bank together. If one of the children, when you die, says, hey, it's a terrible time to sell real estate, and another one says, I need it to be sold, and you have co-trustees, now each of them are in conflict that they both have to go to their own attorneys, and whenever you get two attorneys involved, you're going to have costs involved. So I normally say, don't have co, pick one child. If that one can't do it, go to the next. And if you think there's a dispute, I always say, let's flip the order dealing with medical decisions. So you have one child handle finances, but the other child can handle the medical decisions for the parents. And that usually is a cohesive thing. And I tell clients, talk to your children ahead of time. Knock on wood, most of my trusts, when somebody dies, are not contested. There's no arguments because I'm a firm believer of talking to your children before you die about how you set things up, who the trustees are, who's going to be in charge of things, and write letters to your children. I actually dictate tapes to my trustees, to my children, sealed in an envelope to say, if you're listening to this, it's sad. It means I've died, but it basically is a letter, and I do it in my voice so they can hear my voice, and it basically says, here's who I picked as trustee, here's the financial planner to go to, here's the attorney I trust, here's the safe combination, here's the passwords when I die. So I've set things up so they have an idea of where to go.
Boy, what a great suggestion that is. You know, I love the idea of hearing your voice for a couple of reasons. One is it just removes that kind of question, even if that question is like, 1%. Of is what exactly did Dad really want from me, right? Because not only do they hear your voice to have the confirmation, but the tonality of your voice,
correct,
I think is so important because it will you can express in your conversation and your message, why it's important to you, and they'll pick that up, and I think that's a fantastic suggestion. Now. Well, I don't have the old VHS cassette recorders anymore, so I know on our phones you can record. So once they record it on their phone, and where do you recommend that they store that stuff?
So I actually have a dictaphone, an old dictaphone with the micro cassette chips, and I always say be careful on that because I do it January 1st of every year, and I redo it. And this year I had a new dictaphone, and I went to listen, and it wasn't working the right way. So you have to make sure that you have the technology that somebody can listen to it. So I have a little micro cassette chip with a dictaphone, and that's how I do it. If you have it on a phone, you've just got to keep redoing it each and every year. I tell people don't delay.
Well, I just thought, I mean, I guess you could use an iPad, right?
You could
shoot a little video
or
of having a conversation and record it, and then upload it someplace and maybe put it on your Dropbox account.
Exactly.
Where it's private and secure and that kind of thing, and have it set up that way within a folder in Dropbox.
Just make sure that they have your password to be able to get to that, and that's a key thing that we've had problems with lately is individuals die and we can't get into any of their accounts to figure out where their assets are, these special messages that they may have left, so you have to make sure that you have that somewhere.
Right, okay, all right, now, what are some of the things that you see that go wrong with?
So, a couple of things. One thing we discussed a little earlier, and that is when people come to get a trust, remember I say you need to put everything into your trust with the exception of retirement accounts. Retirement accounts stay in your individual name. The key problem that I see is they've gone to an investment advisor that says, oh, you have a trust, just name your trust as the beneficiary of your IRA. That's one of the worst things you can do. If an IRA goes into your trust when you die, a trust doesn't have a life expectancy, and therefore 50% of it will end up going to the U.S. government in taxes. I normally say name your spouse's primary beneficiary, children's secondary beneficiary, so that when you die, if both you and your wife were to die, the children get to set up what's called an inherited IRA, take that money out over their lifetime. It defers the income tax substantially. So that's one of the things that I see done wrong is beneficiary designations on IRAs. The second thing is when we do a checkup and people come into our office, we always say, have you put your property into the trust, your real estate, your bank accounts? Because if it's not in the name of the trust and you die, it still ends up going through probate. So some people will set up a new bank account, forget to put it into their trust, and we have a trust that has nothing in it, and therefore it's useless. It still ends up going through this year-long probate process. Or somebody will refinance their mortgage, and when they do that, a lot of lenders don't want to refinance to a trust. Not that they can't, but now the legal department has to review your 60-page trust document. So instead, they have you take the property out of your trust, and then my clients forget to put it back into the trust. So that's a huge pitfall that I see, is they refinanced their mortgage, forgot to put the property back into their trust. We can do that for them. We charge $175 to do it, so it's not a big fee. But that's a big pitfall, is you have to make sure if you have a trust, you put all your assets into the trust with the exception of retirement accounts, cars, and usually life insurance if you have adult children doesn't need to go into the trust.
All right, for clarification, when you say put something into a trust, explain to them what that exactly what they need to do so that it is in fact correctly in their trust.
So we have in our trust is a lot of pages, but we have a 7-page document called a certificate of trust that when they're done signing, they will actually take it to the bank, and that bank account will be retitled in their name as trustee of their trust. So my wife and I, our bank account reads Todd Litman and Lisa Litman as trustees of the Litman Revocable Living Trust dated July 26, 1996. That's actually how our title reads. But as a result of that now, when we die, we didn't own it, the trust did, and that's why it doesn't have to go through probate. Our successor trustee now can immediately go into the bank, show them their ID, show them a copy of the trust, and have access to be able to distribute those assets to our children. That's what means putting it into the name of the trust. That's funding the trust.
Okay, so that checks off the banks. Okay, what about insurance policies then?
So life insurance policies, if you have adult children, I normally say just like IRAs, name your spouse as the primary beneficiary and children as secondary. It gets paid to them much quicker. But in our case, with minor children, spouse is my primary beneficiary, but our trust, the Litman Revocable Living Trust, dated July 26, 1996, is our contingent beneficiary. So that if both my wife and I were to die, that life insurance goes into our trust to be distributed to our children at the ages that we spelled out, with my sister as the successor trustee managing it for their benefit. That's what you do with life insurance.
Is the insurance company going to request or require that same document that the bank is?
No, life insurance companies normally don't. You just have what's called a change of beneficiary form. So you ask for that form, you fill it out, and you dictate right in that form where you want things to go. Personal property is another thing that I see a mistake on. So many people, I would say the main argument that I have when somebody dies is children going, "Mom promised me this gold trinket." And the other daughter says, "No, Mom promised me the gold trinket." And they will fight. I literally had a brother and a sister spend over $20,000 in attorney's fees fighting over these 12 gold dishes that were Mom's dishes. And I said to the brother who I represented, "Just give your sister the dishes." "No." I said, "Then just split them 6-6. "No." At the end of the day, $20,000 each in attorney's fees. The judge awarded 6 dishes to each of them. So I tell people, take out a piece of paper. Our trust allows you on a separate written document just to say, "I want my ring to go to my daughter. I want my watch to go to my son." Sign it, date it. It doesn't have to be witnessed or notarized. And that is a legal document according to our trust. And I highly encourage people to do that if you think there would be an argument over that.
Right, right. You know, I shake my head because, guys, you know, when you talk about that argument, I can't tell you how often I run into that. You know, I mean, now, I've been in the real estate industry. It's my 40th year. So a lot of the clients that I've had through the years, their folks have died, and they've dealt with these issues with their brothers and sisters and all. So everything you're saying is 100% real. It happens all the time. It's really a shame. Now, I learned something from Todd that we were talking before that anyway, you got to learn this. This is really amazing about. Talk about one of the key components of what we're trying to teach people with the whole Wealth Academy is how can we grow our wealth as rapidly as possible? How can we create income for us, and how can we overcome the struggle to save money? And all the limitations that 401ks have. I call it the 4 major flaws of the 401k. Well, I want to have Todd share with you today a little bit what he was educated me on this morning about a self-directed IRA and what you can do with moving the money from the 401k to IRA. So, and the benefits about this. I wanted to share that with everyone again.
Sure. We were talking about asset protection planning and what truly can be protected in the event you were being sued. A lot of times, if it's real estate and it's rental real estate, we will set up LLCs so that if you're sued, they can only go after the LLC, not your personal assets. And very often they can't get the actual assets in the LLC, only perhaps the income. And there's things we can protect that on. But what we were talking about, as I also said, I tell people maximize your 401ks at work, because that is 100% protected from lawsuits. Even a bankruptcy, they can't get at those assets. So it has great asset protection. Very often when people leave work, they roll their 401k over into an IRA. That is, again, 100% protected. So if you have that IRA with a lot of cash in there, you can now do a self-directed IRA by buying real estate within that IRA and watch that real estate grow, have the rental income still be tax-free within the IRA. And the beauty of that then is if you're sued, nobody can touch that IRA asset. It's 100% protected from lawsuits. And if it's not rolled over or a SEP IRA and you're creating a new IRA, the law says that it's protected up to the extent that you need it for retirement. And there's been many cases saying up to $1 million in an IRA would be protected from lawsuits. So when people say, how can I protect my assets? That's one of the greatest ways, is through these retirement plans in protecting assets, along with LLCs.
Well, and there's no real cost for that, right?
Not a cost at all.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, so getting that level of protection for no real cost. And other maneuvers, as far as legal fees and what have you, can get pretty expensive. I want to share a quick personal client story that applies to what Todd was just explaining. Is one of my clients has quite a bit of money in his 401k, or something about $700,000 that we talked about moving to a self-directed IRA. And the reason we talked about moving it is that the return, as we get older, we can't afford the exposure. So the return he's getting is really has been really low, and so the income from it is going to be minimal. So we looked at moving this to a self-directed IRA so that he could use this to pick up some investment property. But what I didn't realize, I didn't know is the fact is what Todd was saying is that by moving this to a self-directed IRA, now he can secure a property and have that completely protected from litigation or from lawsuits and that risk. So now you have the best of both worlds, where you can kind of get a maximum return, take advantage of the 5 economic benefits of real estate that we talk about, put maximum income from the investment, and then have 100% protection. So attaching these two things are terrific. So we only got a couple more minutes, so here's what I'd like to kind of wrap up, is that someone that's heard this today saying, okay, because we've talked about from a single parent, young kids, getting some life insurance, getting a place where they can really protect their kids. What's a checklist that they should start writing down, saying, okay, I'm going to talk to Todd, here are the things I need to be kind of organizing my thoughts, the things that are going to happen, and from whether it's that single person to someone that has a home, the things they need to organize, and just help them organize their thoughts. So when they get together with you, they're ready.
Basically, when somebody is interested in coming in to discuss estate planning, we would have them go to my website, or we mail them out a package which includes a questionnaire form. It's not a long questionnaire form, but that gives us financial information to decide, do we need to do a trust, do we not? Do you have young children? Do you have adult children? Are we going to talk about guardians? That's one of the key things that we talk about a lot too, is if you have minor children, that's usually a snag why people don't come in, is they can't figure out who will be the guardian of their child. I say it's much better to put something in writing to not have anything at all. So going to the questionnaire form, filling that out, and then when you come in, we're going to discuss how you want things to be distributed. I'll give you examples of how people do that with minor children. We're also going to talk about who you want your trustee to be. We also get into the Advanced Healthcare Directive, dealing with medical decisions, and you need to decide, okay, if I'm in a hospital, who will make medical decisions for me, including end-of-life decisions, funeral arrangements, yes or no to organ transplant. Those are the type of things we'll talk about, and we always need to have a backup agent in that document. So you need to think, if you're a married couple and my wife or husband can't make that decision, who would I want to make that decision? And you need to pick somebody who's going to be strong enough to be able to make that decision.
Okay, terrific. One of the things that, Todd mentioned this earlier, but I want to address it with all of you to know how important this is Todd's expertise and knowledge in accounting. And that when it comes to your estate planning, we were talking before about the Tax Reform Act. We're bringing in a CPA that is done a ton of research on the Tax Reform Act, so we're going to have a show on that. But Todd's expertise and knowledge, now he's not a CPA, but he has a lot of accounting. He knows the laws, and I'm sure you know whether working with your personal CPA or him referring to someone. But my point is in protecting your estate, the tax component of it is also very, very important to that. Well, I think we've had a couple more minutes, but thank you very much, Todd.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, a couple quick things we're going to wrap up here. For more information, you can see we have the Mark One Wealth Academy website, mark1wealthacademy.com. The recording of this will be posted on our Mark One Wealth Academy. You'll see when you get on the website, there's a section for videos. So for those of you that want to share this with some family members or friends, you go to the Mark One Wealth Academy website. You'll see this video. We'll have Todd's phone number on that. We showed this earlier in the slide or in the presentation, so you can see his number there. And as Todd mentioned, he's local here in Tustin, so we'll have that as well. When you go to the website, get your free ebook. You're going to learn a lot about the process of how to begin the journey to building wealth. These are really incredible times, and I say that because the Tax Reform Act is a game changer. There was an article I read this morning in the Wall Street Journal that I posted on my personal Facebook site. We're going to be bringing John Jackson, who's a CPA I work with, to really get into this. But here's what's happening. You see where the stock market is year over year. The Dow's up 40%. I mean, that's insane. The things that we've never seen this in our lifetime. Some of the components that have happened in this Tax Reform Act, from reducing the corporate tax rate, the repatriation of hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars coming into this country. You know, with this pass-through element is a huge benefit that almost all of you can take advantage of if you know how. And that's the point of why we're doing these shows and why we're trying to communicate. The whole purpose of the Wealth Academy. The number of people that just accept, they just believe, you know, this is as good as life's going to get. You know, I have to save, you know, tens of thousands of dollars every year and hundreds of thousands, and you know, I have to be somewhere around $1 million to be able to retire. That's not true. And so their belief system is so negative, they just give up. But it's not true. You don't need to be able to save a lot of money. You know, our program on how to retire without saving money is real. We can show you. So that's why I want you to get the ebook, so you can start to learn that we can get you not just to financial security, but we can get you to a place where you can in fact be wealthy. This is the whole process. But I know most of you, and I keep saying this every week, and I'm going to keep saying it because I know you don't believe it, and you're sitting there, oh, I've heard my whole life I got to save a ton of money, and that's why I'm just, you know, I'm never going to have a better life. That is not true. The point of this show is to get you the free information. Share this with the people, you know, when I say people you care about, your family, your friends, that you want to see have a better life. We're providing all this information. It's free, but you need to learn the process. It's not going to come to you. And when I say it, I'm referring to the knowledge and the wealth. You have to go toward getting the knowledge. I can make it available, but you have to invest the time. So we're making it available. There's no cost, but let's get engaged. And then when you're ready, it starts off with a free book so you can start to learn a little bit. We want to get into a financial freedom analysis so we can look at where you are. Then we get together and do your How to Become Rich plan, so you know exactly how you're going to become rich. And let me define what we do in our How to Become Rich plan. Here are the three things you need to know. What are your expenses going to be at time of retirement? So that's a moving target, whether you're going to retire in 5 years or 25 years. So we need to know what are your expenses, but it's a simple analysis. Number two is how are we going to create that income? We're going to show you exactly how you're going to create the income to cover your expenses at time of retirement without saving money. Saving money is not necessary. I mean, it's a great thing. I'm not trying to discourage it, but it's not the end all. And most people, 99% of the people, think it's the end all. I had a guy get all upset at me. You know, they said, "Oh, you know, what do you think? I'm an idiot? You know, I know you know, that's not." I said, just relax. Let me show you how this is real. All right. And then third is the timeline. How long is it going to take? So we can lay all this out so you get the answers to these three critical questions. Well, I appreciate you participating in our show today. Again, it will be on the Mark One Wealth Academy, and this will also be on our Facebook page here for the next week. So thank you. If you have any, by the way, do we have any questions? Are there any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, and have a great weekend. All right.